All right, Alexander, let's do an update as to what's going on in Ukraine. We have the Kherson counteroffensive. We have the Zaporozhye amphibious assault, and both were failures, but the Kherson counteroffensive looks like it's going to continue, and they're going to go on their third and fourth and fifth wave of advances or try to advance, but it seems like the Russians have everything under control. This is a massive failure. The media is not reporting on it, to be quite honest, in the West. Even Ukraine has kind of put a gag order not to allow
Yeah.
journalists to talk about this either. And this is a major defeat and embarrassment for the collective West, for Boris Johnson, who probably ordered this, if you believe the rumors. For Zelensky, the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant assault is a massive embarrassment, not reported by any mainstream media outlets. This is going to boomerang back and really, really damage the Zelensky regime. I dare say this might be the end of the Zelensky regime. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I'm saying this has definitely opened the door to it because the deaths and the casualties and the suffering from this reckless initiative are stunning. Lines at blood banks, hospitals full. I mean, just this was a disaster.
Absolutely. Disaster is not even I mean, it was an apocalyptic disaster. I mean, it was a disaster on the scale of some of those battles that we've all heard about, at least in Britain, from the First World War. You know, the Battle of the Somme, the battles of Passchendaele, First and Second and Third Ypres and all these things. I mean, it's just horrendous. And you're absolutely right. There's an almost complete media blackout on them. I mean, the media here in London has practically stopped talking about the Great Kherson counteroffensive and the attack on the nuclear power station, which, by the way, I find one of the most bizarre events I've ever heard about. When I read about it initially, I'm going to say this, I thought this simply cannot be true. The Russians must be making this up. Now I'm absolutely convinced that it is true. But this was so strange, so bizarre. So we have a situation which is 9/10 tragedy and 1/10 farce, and really, really awful farce. Now let's talk about the Kherson counteroffensive. Weeks, months of commentary from all kinds of people, all the military people we've consulted, all the military people we take seriously. Douglas McGregor, Daniel Davis, Scott Ritter, Andrei Martyanov, lots of others, Brian Beletic, all of them saying one thing: you cannot carry out this kind of offensive over open country unless you possess air superiority and artillery superiority. And Ukraine has neither. So they did it anyway. And they have been killed in the thousands. And, again, when I was getting the first numbers, 560, 1,200, 1,700, I was skeptical. But now we're getting more reports, including sort of dribbles of admissions from Ukrainian generals, that it is indeed on that kind of scale. And a whole region in Ukraine, Transcarpathia, has now declared a day of mourning because of the soldiers from that region who were killed in this slaughter. Now, it is horrible. And I've seen some pictures, by the way. I see pictures of hulls of burnt out tanks. Apparently, the way the Ukrainians attack, they don't have many armoured vehicles, but they were given a large number of tanks, about 200 tanks by Poland. So you see these pictures of Ukrainian soldiers marching behind, in the open fields, marching behind the tanks towards the Russian guns. And of course, doing that, I mean, again, I'm not a military person, but it's not difficult to see how crazy that is. And yet they've been doing it day after day after day. And what have they achieved? Well, I was checking the positions this morning when we did this program, which I should say is Friday. And on every part of the front lines, the Russians are now back in their original positions. In other words, the Ukrainians have made no advances at all. One exception is a bridgehead that the Ukrainians have over the Ingulets River, where they've been able to cross. They're surrounded on all sides by Russian artillery. They're suffering horrific casualties there. There's more and more rumors that this was deliberately done by the Russians to draw these Ukrainian soldiers into a fire trap. And apparently, one Ukrainian military unit in this bridgehead has now begged to be allowed to retreat to the other side of the river because they're being shelled and bombed 24/7, every hour, every day, with no end of this in sight. So this is not just a slaughter; it's a crime. It's a crime against these people who've been sent into the battle in this manner. And the Ukrainian military apparently advised against it. And Zelensky, pressed by Boris Johnson, I believe it. I don't know that for a fact, but I believe it. He nonetheless ordered this offensive to be carried out in this hideous way. And we see the result. And the Ukrainian military are refusing to even comment about this offensive. They're not publishing any information about it. And I can't get this. I get the overwhelming sense that the generals themselves are sickened by it. The Ukrainian generals are sickened by it, and that they're washing their hands of the whole affair. Now, Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, who's had very good connections with Ukraine in the past, and you used to at one time try to keep a balance between Ukraine and Russia. He's now come out and said that he thinks that the possibility of a coup in Kiev, a military coup, is now very high, and that the Ukrainian military are now at breaking point. I mean, they're absolutely exasperated with the politicians. And for all I know, he's right. Certainly, to be frank, and I'm not somebody who likes coups, to be frank, I hope it happens because we just can't allow this to go on, as Alex said, going on day after day after day, people sent to be massacred in this hideous fashion. And this attack on the power station is an act of complete lunacy. It's clear that the Russians knew all about it in advance. They'd they tracked all the Ukrainian preparations. And you know what they say, Zelensky comes from the movies, from the cinema. If he was an actor, all the people around him are from the same background. They behave like a production team. Well, it's clear to me they've been watching far too many James Bond movies. You know, the ones where, you know, the hero single-handed captures the heavily guarded lair of the enemy. And, you know, we got all those 60s films that, we all remember about, you know, people doing the same, you know, Where Eagles Dare, the Guns of Navarone, the Heroes of Telemark. Real life isn't like that. And again, hundreds of people apparently have been killed in this thing, and they've achieved nothing.
Yeah, Lukashenko. I did a video a couple of days ago, Alexander, and I thought about it, and I said, you know what, I bet you Zaluzny is sick of Zelensky.
Yeah.
And he's going to say, you know what, you want to go ahead with this? Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. And he's washing his hands of all of this. That's going to open the door up for something. There's a possibility there.
I have to say...
It's a cynical point of view, but...
Well, the thing to always remember about Zaluzny is that he's a soldier, and the function of a soldier is, you know, he carries out the orders of his commander-in-chief. But he's now been put in a position where he's being asked to carry out orders which he must know are irrational. And of course, he has his duty towards his men. And it must be a tremendously difficult position for him to be in. But I suspect that, you know, inexorably, events must be pushing him towards a certain decision. Now, I don't know what he's going to do, and I don't want to predict anything because I don't think we can. And we mustn't overlook the fact that in Kiev, there's all sorts of security forces, there's also kinds of intelligence forces. The Western powers will not want to see that kind of a change of power. Obviously not. But I think you're absolutely right. The military must be disgusted by this affair. Well, they're giving every sign of being. As I said, they're not publishing any information about this offensive at all. As if you went to the bulletins the Ukrainian General Staff is publishing, you wouldn't even know there was an offensive going on in Kherson region. They've just washed their hands of the whole affair.
Yeah. Breaking news from Sergei Shoigu. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
The guy that's had 20 heart attacks, and the Daily Mail said that Putin had sidelined him. He's ignoring him. Doesn't want to talk to him
about 5 times,
anymore.
I think they've said that. I think they've said that about 5 times. They were saying it again a few days ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. Somehow he got out of his prison cell or wherever Putin exiled him to, and he made a statement. He said that Ukraine, this is the defense minister, he said that Ukrainian attempt at an offensive in Nikolaev, Kryvyi Rog, South Ukraine, and other directions continues with Kiev's troops suffering significant losses. These actions were planned by Zelensky's office to create the illusion of the ability of Ukraine military to conduct offenses. Pesky Donetsk, the region, all other regions under Russian controls, the border of Nikolaev, South Ukraine, 3,000 foreign mercenaries have also been killed since the start of this operation. Basically, what you said, everything is pretty much going back to where it was before this great Kherson counteroffensive. But the only difference is that now you have thousands upon thousands of Ukraine military who have been killed or injured. But Zelensky continues to send more and more troops there. And I guess that is the strategy, isn't it? The order from NATO is we're going to throw all the manpower we have towards Russia, and Russia's going to throw all their artillery towards that manpower, and let's see who lasts longer. I mean, my point in all of this is the collective West really does believe that Russia is running low on artillery and ammo because they think they can just keep on throwing waves after waves after waves of men towards this artillery, and I guess they believe that it's just going to stop because Russia's going to run out.
Yes. That's the only strategy they have, it seems to me. It's the only strategy they have. Now, of course, the cynicism of it makes one. It makes one feel terrible. I was going to use a much stronger word, but that's the only strategy that I could see. Try to get the Russian ammunition, to run out over piles of Ukrainian corpses. Now, of course, if this is wrong, if this assumption that the Russians are running out of ammunition turns out to be wrong, well, the effect will be awful. And the Russians seem to be under they don't seem to be under any particular pressure. They don't seem to be worried that they're going to run out of ammunition. But that is the calculation. Perhaps it's the hope. We'll see if it's right.
I say that because the Defense Ministry of the UK, when they issue out these little 3-paragraph reports, they didn't mention the Kherson counteroffensive in their reports, which is very telling. But they did talk a lot about 3 of those bullet points. 2 of those, of the 3, was the UK Defense Ministry, the intelligence agencies, talking about how Russia is, they're conducting their Vostok military drills. And they said that while Russia was saying that 50,000 troops would be taking part in these military drills, we believe, they used this little caveat, we believe, we think, usually, one of these types of qualifiers, that Russia only has 15,000 men to allocate to the Vostok military drills, hinting at the fact that Russia is indeed being depleted. It is just a matter of time. It's just another third or fourth or fifth wave of troops, rushing towards the front lines, and then finally Russia's going to break. That was what the UK Defence Ministry was getting at.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I saw the same bulletin. I came to exactly the same conclusion. Of course, it's only their belief that the Russians only have 15,000 troops in the Vostok
Why do they believe
exercises.
it?
Well, why do they believe it? Presumably, they have their own sources of intelligence, which are not known to me. All I would say is the Chinese, the Indians, India is participating. It's now confirmed. They are participating in the Vostok exercises. They presumably know how many troops the Russians have, because how would they be able to participate in these exercises if they didn't? So if the Russians are saying they've got 50,000, they're doing so in conditions where they know that China and India would know the opposite, would know something else. And I don't personally think the Russians would do that. I don't think the Russians would say that they have 50,000 men participating in exercises and would lie, in effect, to the Chinese and the Indians in conditions where that lie would be found out.
Why is NATO? Why does the United States, the EU, why do they continue to fight this conflict, this proxy war, under the assumption that Russia's going to be depleted of their weapons? Is their goal to say, like what Lloyd Austin said, like 4 months back? Is their goal to say, let's damage Russia as much as we can by using Ukraine, and then their belief is that then they can maybe start up another conflict somewhere else with a very depleted Russia?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand why do they continue to go down this line? Why do they continue to believe this? There must be some sort of logic in their thinking here, or some sort of game plan that they want to accomplish by just continuing to, in their minds, continuing to get Russia to throw artillery at Ukraine over and over again. I mean, they obviously don't care about the Ukraine military. That's obvious, the men that are fighting. But they must be saying something like, let's just continue to do this because in 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, we'll be able to do X, Y, and Z because Russia's going to be weakened. I mean,
Yeah.
something like that seems to be going on
Well,
in
that's
their
exactly
minds.
what they think. I mean, that's exactly what. I mean, there was that Rand Corporation study from 2019, which talked about surrounding Russia with pressure points. The biggest pressure point was supposedly going to be Ukraine, create a crisis there, weaken Russia by depleting its resources in this way, and then that will mean that you have a weakened Russia that you can bully and push around, and your sanctions will eventually achieve your objective, and then of course you break this Eurasian alliance system that's now starting to emerge. That is the plan. Now, I think 4 months ago, when Austin and Blinken went and met Zelensky in Kiev, and Austin blurted out that that was the plan, it was still possible to believe in it. I think now it's becoming increasingly clear that it's not working out at all that way. That on the contrary, what's happening is that Ukraine is being destroyed. Russia is winning the attrition war, both economically and militarily. And there's a real possibility now that it won't emerge weakened from this conflict. It will emerge strengthened from this conflict, just as the United States emerged strengthened out of the American Civil War of the 1860s, for example, which was also an attrition conflict. But that was your original plan. You're all invested in it. The administration is invested in it. Austin is invested in it. Johnson is invested in it. Macron, Scholz is invested in it. So you can't give up on it, because if you do, then obviously you face a reckoning. So what do? You double down. You double down, you throw more Ukrainians into the battle in this kind of way. You press on with your economic war of attrition. You do so however bad the situation becomes in Europe, however bad it becomes in your own country. Annalena Baerbock let slip the truth. She's going to continue no matter what happens in Germany. However bad conditions become in Germany for people in Germany, she's going to continue this thing, supporting Ukraine, as she puts it, because for her, now that's the priority, because the entire political survival of this project, this NATO globalist project, has now come to rest on this war in Ukraine. So they're going to go on doing it in the hope that eventually they're going to win, that eventually Russia will break. They will clutch at straws, like that report from Yale University, Professor Sommerfeld, that the Russian economy is on the brink of collapse. They'll come up with new ideas like the oil price cap that they're now pressing forward with. They're going to send more Ukrainian soldiers, marching into the Russian guns to be slaughtered. They're going to go on doing this in the hope that eventually, in a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months, all of this will achieve its effect and Russia will break.
All right, let's shift gears since you mentioned the oil price caps.